Hi everyone. So Guru Purnima 2021 is here. Some people are celebrating it today, some are going to celebrate it tomorrow. And I just thought of covering one topic that I wanted to blog on actually from a long time since I read the Aghora 2 book, because there was a very interesting topic covered in it in a fairly practical and interesting way, which was how to test any saints or gurus that we come across. And I thought this was a good occasion to do that. So this is the Aghora 3 book, but that doesn't have that section about how to test the gurus. The how to test the saints is in the Aghora 2 book, and I don't have the Aghora 2 book because Aghora 2 and Aghora 1 are in Coimbatore and this book is with me here in Ahmedabad. I don't know why the trilogy got split like this, but that's what's happened. So I'm going to keep the book here for the ambience, so it kind of reminds you that this is the book series we are reading, and it kind of also creates this ambience. There's a plant, there's a book, what else do we want kind of a thing. What I have is the photograph of that section on my phone, because I usually click photographs of content I like in these books because it's just easier to refer to as a photograph. So, yes, let me get started in this. For people who don't know about the Aghora series, let me give you a very quick introduction. Basically, it's written by a person called Robert Svoboda, and he was the first Western person to get the Ayurvedic doctor degree in India. He studied in Pune, and at the time not a single other Western person had gone through the formal educational course, and he did do that and he got the degree also. And during his studies, he found Vimalananda, as I think it was part of his assignment or something like that. And he spent a lot of time with Vimalananda and became like a disciple, or I don't know what exact word he uses himself. But he has written these books which are called Aghori. It's a Aghori trilogy, 3 parts. Because Vimalananda was, he was a common, like a, the way we call undercover yogi, like we are normal people doing normal stuff, but we are yogis, like that. He was an undercover Aghori. So he was like a normal person doing all his stuff in society, but he followed the part of Aghora. And a lot of his teachings and interesting stuff and experiences of Robert Svoboda and Vimalananda sharing stuff, all of that has been compiled in the book, and it's very interesting. It's a pretty good read, and I think in general in spiritual circles it is considered really well, because I actually, before I read this book, I usually don't read spiritual books too much, but I actually got the recommendation from 3 different completely unconnected sources, like spiritual people who I knew, and 3 different people from different sources recommended it to me. So I said, okay, fine, since it's coming with so much of recommendation, let me read it. And yeah, I really liked it actually. And not just that, after I finished the book, Robert Svoboda actually teaches Ayurveda, so I've done some of his courses also by now, and it has been really good. It was very interesting. It's nice. So I am going to start reading this because this section is pretty interesting. I'm not going to read all of it. I'm going to pick a few chunks which are relevant, and I'll also give a little bit of commentary because there are certain experiences I would like to share on those things and all that. So it starts like this. One day Vimalananda sat me down and outlined for me his criteria for testing saints. And this is what he says. Some people follow what is called the path of the ant in their search for God. They scurry about hither and thither, moving backward as well as forward, taking many births to reach their goal. Those who are more determined follow the path of the fish, swimming strongly against the current. The path of the monkey, which involves leaping from limb to limb on the tree of knowledge, is more difficult still, but the most difficult is the path of the bird, the path we Aghoris follow. You leap out into space and your wings carry you to him. Of course, if your wings fail and you drop to the ground, you are finished totally, you are dead. A monkey at least has branches to break its fall. A fish can rest behind a rock whenever it needs to. The path of the ant takes the longest time, but it is the most secure, because an ant has nowhere to fall. The more difficult a sadhana is, the more necessary it is to have a guru. In Kundalini Yoga, it is absolutely essential to have an expert guru. The guru is a spiritual aspirant's friend, philosopher, and guide. He guards the disciple against all dangers and ignites the internal flames which eventually consume all the limitations of the disciple's personality. You can make spiritual progress without having a guru, it is true. But if you want to reach the highest states, a guru is absolutely essential. No effort is ever lost. Even if you cannot succeed in this lifetime, your effort is right there in your bank balance, in an account that travels with you from birth to birth. It is such a wonderful account that you can never lose your passbook. The vibrations of your efforts exist indefinitely in a subtle form, so there is nothing to worry about. No matter where you end up, you will be dragged back into your spiritual practices. All the records of your past lives are available to anyone who knows how to locate them and who can perceive their subtle sound. So your guru never has any difficulty keeping track of where you are and what you are doing, no matter how far you may stray from him. So this is very interesting, because in the first, if you see, I always found this interesting in this book that there's a lot of interesting texture in his content actually. First he talks about path of the ant, path of the bird, path of the fish. So it brings to me the Buddhist practices, and I'm like, ooh. And then he goes into a guru is absolutely necessary, because yes, of course, it's totally necessary. And then I think that is repeated by a lot of spiritual leaders. So I think a lot of us will totally agree to it also. But then he goes into this thing which is like no effort is ever lost, birth to birth the record is kept, and it makes me feel so good, like okay, great, so and that's this thread that I've seen all through these books, where he talks about nature's records, the law of karma by itself, and it's actually very soothing, which is a little surprising, because karma in general is touted to be something that is like repercussion, like oh my god, you'll do this and that'll happen. But when you see it in the right way, karma can be so nice, because it's basically life giving you what you need, and if you're able to just take it in its stride and its flow, it will teach you the right lessons, and then we are ready to move on. And it's actually, so I really love this. I mean, so I'm going ahead now. Just hope my commentary adds any value. But for you to have this sort of guarantee that you have a real guru, out of 1,000 sadhus today, perhaps one is genuine, because it is Kali Yuga. You will meet many sadhus, Robbie, and you will need to know how to evaluate them. You should learn to smell saints out. Yes, smell them out. They say attar can be created only when flowers are crushed. And it is the same way with a sadhu. Attar is basically perfume. So for the people who don't know, so they are saying attar can be created only when flowers are crushed, and it is the same way with a sadhu. Only after his ego has been thoroughly crushed, so that his Kundalini can identify with God, will he be able to give a sweet smell to all who come near him. So long as he retains traces of selfishness, a stench will follow him wherever he goes. And then he goes to say, I'm skipping a little bit, and I'm going to say that the least experienced person can say only attar is present. Someone with more experience can identify it more accurately. It is rose. Only an expert will recognize the fine nuances. It is Kabuli rose mixed with a little jasmine. It is the same way with saints. So he's giving a little analogy. He's not saying to smell them out. I mean, that's not the first. The first practical tip is following next, which I'm going to cover, and I found this one very relevant. If you want to find out whether or not a sadhu is genuine, first go to see him, but don't ask any questions. Sit quietly and don't say much. Listen and try to keep your mind blank. If when you sit near him you find yourself forgetting the things of the world and becoming more peaceful, then he is a good saint. His halo is quieting your mind. If not, run away. So this was very interesting for me when I read this, because I've actually experienced this, and I will share it with you in a little bit. The thing is, when we are reading these spiritual books, it's very important to not be too gullible and just keep, just take everything without really understanding it, questioning it properly. Being skeptical actually helps us to understand things properly, because you just don't take it just like that. You kind of look into it and understand what is this exactly mean. So all of the previous stuff that I read through, and I liked it, and I said it was really good texture and stuff, it doesn't convince me about what he's going to say next, because I need to know what exact tips he's going to give, and I'm going to evaluate it myself in my own mind. And when I read this as the first one, which was that just go and sit near the sadhu and see what happens to your mind just by being there, that really struck a chord for me, because I have experienced something like this, and I will share it with you. So, but what I was saying is, this is how a lot of us validate these spiritual books, because when a lot of spiritual circles, certain books are being considered, well, it is because a lot of us start identifying it with certain things we've already experienced as being mentioned in the book, and that's how that little bit of a verification happens. So, yeah, this had happened to me with Sadhguru all the time actually, Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev, and I keep talking about him all the time, because some of my spiritual base and a lot of foundation in a way comes from him and from that ashram. So, it used to happen to me, my mind would just get blank, and it's hard to describe, but what really struck me, and I was able to relate to very strongly when I read this piece in the book, is that I stayed in the Isha ashram for quite some time, and like there were certain conversations I would have liked to have with Sadhguru, but whenever I used to go near him, I couldn't remember anything. Like, I literally just cannot remember, and that happened so many times that I said, okay, I'm just gonna, to the extent what I did was I actually wrote letters and I kept it with me. I said, when I will go next to him, I will not remember anything, but at least I can give him the letter. But somehow when I went near him, not only did I not remember anything, I just didn't want to give importance to those thoughts, like all those, organizational jingbang that's going on in the mind. I just didn't want to give importance to. I was never able to articulate to Sadhguru nor give my letter, even if I was carrying it with me. It's just at that moment all those thoughts seemed so small and petty and all, but obviously later they didn't. So eventually I did give a letter to him personally also, and I passed some letters through the office and things. But this situation happened a lot of times with me actually, that I just couldn't use my usual thinking, all just stopped and I didn't know what was going on, and then sometimes I did some funny stuff when he's there. So. And at the time I didn't know what was going on, because I had not read this book, nor I had, that Vivekananda's experience where he goes to ask in the temple to Kalima for some financial help, but whenever he goes inside the temple, he's never able to ask. And finally he just surrenders and he just says, give me spiritual growth, and finishes the matter. So I didn't know that story also, so I had no idea what was going on. I just knew that was a very weird experience in general. But then someone in Isha who had been with Sadhguru from beginning kind of, and had attended so many satsangs with him and all, he told me that it was probably because Sadhguru has much higher level of awareness, and his halo and everything, it just quietens your mind down like anything. So it does happen to us that when we meet these people who are like saints and like, higher level in a way, they kind of quieten our mind down, And since then I have experienced this feeling sometimes with some of the monks at the Isha ashram, but very less, not that much, because I see, if I experience this with a lot of people, I would feel very bad, because I would feel that my own awareness is so low that every damn person is making me feel like mind blank, like their awareness is higher. So, but I felt it few times, which is nice, not too many times, so I would feel bad. But with Sadhguru, I do feel in general, like with him, I can never be sure, like if he was there, and if I say that, if I actually want to talk to him something, but I have no guarantee that if he actually comes in front of me, whether I'll be able to say it. Because I have had so many experiences, I actually did have access to him at some point, and I just cannot. It's random. So yeah, that's so the first point really resonated with me, because it just brought back this thing, and I just realized it's actually pretty true. And I think maybe a lot of y'all may have experienced it sometime, because I know my mother had a similar experience once. I think she was in the Brahma Kumari mission or something, and someone had come to talk to us, and I was kind of just not paying any attention, but my mother was talking to her, and she said she had like some kind of an experience, like just mind going blank kind of a similar thing. So I think it does happen. So that's a good point. Now, since we've yapped enough about the first point, let's move to the second point. The second point is very intriguing. He goes like, check the saint's feces. Like the shopkeeper wanted to wrestle there. That's an example he had shared earlier. A real yogi, basically he wants us to check the shit of the yogi. A real yogi, literally shit, not. A real yogi excretes only an ounce or at most a few ounces a day. Anything more indicates that he is bogus. If Jatara Agni has yielded most of its energy to Bhuta Agni, there will be very little physical digestive fire left. Yogis are disciplined by nature, and a good yogi will only eat as much as he is hungry for. If he eats more than he can digest, he will have to excrete the excess, and you will be able to detect it. Or if his bodily fire is generally weak, his assimilation will be poor and he will excrete more than he absorbs, which suggests that his mind will be as dull as his body. Yes, so he basically asks us to check the feces that a saint or the Muni that we want to test excretes. Now, he talks about Jain Munis, and he talks about Jains a lot in his books, and it's very interesting for me. This principle makes Jain Munis easy to test because of their toilet habits. They never go outside the house to defecate. Usually they do it on an outer balcony or somewhere like that, and they never use water to clean themselves afterwards, since water is life-giving and they regard it as sacred. So they clean themselves with a pebble or a stone and just leave the dung there for the rain to wash away. When someone told me one day that an excellent Jain Muni had just arrived in town, I first went to see his droppings. And after I saw them, I knew he would be no match for me. I went in confidently and defeated him easily at religious debate. He was actually rather dull. You can use this test for anyone. So this is fun. This is, of course, I would say a little above us, beyond us, because I don't really, I don't see myself doing it, and I doubt a lot of y'all would either. Okay, the next point is another interesting one. A good saint's face will begin to take on the form of the face of the deity he worships. You know how married couples start to look like one another after 40 or 50 years? This is the same principle. There was a sadhu in Bombay called Kamu Baba, who meditated on Sai Baba of Shirdi for so long that when you looked at him, it was just like looking at Shirdi Sai Baba. At the end of his life, my father looked almost identical to his own guru, on whom he had meditated for decades. There is another saint that Sadhguru has spoken about, Mayamma. Her name was Mayamma. Yeah, and she was a saint in South India. Her samadhi is there in Salem. So apparently there was a person who was taking care of her, and he started looking like her. Like after many years, he looks just like her. That's what Sadhguru was saying. I was a bit confused because I went to that samadhi, I saw Mayamma's photo, and then I was not sure who that person was. I can't remember. I'm a little confused like that. But this is basically, there are other examples of such a thing happening. But this is one of the ways, because I can think of a lot of yogis and not a lot of them actually start resembling their deity. Also because some of the deities don't even have a form. Like for example, if we take Ramana Maharshi, then his deity would be who? Either it would be Arunachalam, the mountain, or it would be Shiva. Either of them, we don't know what they look like. I mean, Arunachalam is a mountain and not a face as such, and Shiva, we don't know how Shiva looked. So, okay, so then he talks about how photos can really help someone self-identify with their gurus. So that is why a lot of saints don't want photos taken. Because while it can help the devotees, anybody who may hate the saint, every time they see his photo, that is the people who hate them, if they see the saint's photo, they will remember the hate and send reinforced negative vibrations to the saint, which will have unpleasant implications for the health and well-being of the poor innocent saint. So now we are assuming that the saint is not enlightened and has not left the body and basically poofed. Now after this, these 3 points which were very interesting, he moves to the other points which are basically about listening to what the sadhu is saying, and then of course deducing our usual logical conclusions, like rational liberal conclusions. For example, he says, do you remember that young woman who was born in India of Western parents? When she came of age, she decided she wanted to marry a fellow disciple of the same female guru. But when she went to ask her guru's permission, the female guru said, no, how can it be? You are a foreigner and he is an Indian. Such a marriage must never take place. This shows the depth of that old woman's deficiency. If she really believed herself to be the Divine Mother incarnate, as she claimed, how could she discriminate between two of her children? Mustn't she treat them all equally? Her prejudice proves that she was not all that spiritually advanced. She could rightly have objected for other reasons, but not simply because of skin color. Or for example, if the supposed saint you meet talks about collecting money to build ashrams and centers and so on, depart immediately. His disciples may talk about such things, I admit. Disciples are always somewhat deluded. Another interesting point, that disciples are always somewhat deluded. But a real sadhu says, why should I bother about trying to establish something? If God wants me to have it, I will have it. This is the right attitude. It shows that the sadhu has full faith in his deity. Only if he has no faith will he try to collect money or disciples or whatever. We have a saying in Hindi, what is the use of a flower which has no fragrance? What is the use of a beautiful face which has no one to desire it? What is the use of a fakir or sadhu who is not a giver? Fakirs and sadhus are always givers because they have realized that everything belongs to God. How can they refuse to give to God in the form of a human being that which belongs to God? It is absolutely scandalous how many people are making money and fame for themselves off the Bhagavad Gita. I knew one Dada Maharaj who had gathered a lot of disciples for himself by his discourses on the Jnaneshwari. You can be sure that a great Siddha like Jnaneshwar did not write the Jnaneshwari so that he could become famous. He did it so that common people who did not know Sanskrit could hear Krishna's story in Marathi, their own language, and keep it in their hearts and bring themselves closer to Krishna in that way. When Jnaneshwar himself never commercialized his writing, why should anyone else do so? So he goes more to talk about Dada Maharaj and the bloated ego he had. So those are the 4 points. I think the first 3 were really interesting. The last point, we need to think a little bit. I think it is not so clear. That's what I would say. Because a lot of them actually encourage anyone who's listening to them, they encourage them to participate in the organization, and by participating it involves donations, it involves volunteering, it involves whichever other means you can participate. And it is also true that if we are giving money to something, if we are spending our time on something, then our intensity towards that thing, our connection with that thing is a lot stronger. Like if you had no investment, you could just go and sit somewhere and whatever that guru says, you could just very happily take it, feel great experiences, but you come back and you are doing the same thing. But if your money is stuck over there, or if your time, like you're actually giving time to that place, then you are probably a lot more concerned about that place, and you are very clear that am I getting everything out of it. So in that sense, it's a little bit dubious, because I think the guru might tell us to participate in different ways. So I think it's also good, because I've been in certain ashrams where probably because I'm new, they just don't, even if I say that can I do some work here, can I do a little cleaning, can I just sweep in the temple, I mean sweeping in the temple is amazing, but they don't allow us to. Like, it's not that they'll say no, but it just goes round and round and round and you don't get the opportunity. So the places where you do get the opportunity, it is definitely a special experience to just be contributing to that place by doing little seva. So I don't think it's wrong for the guru to be asking it, not asking, maybe like coaxing people, because if it is in our best interest, I don't know. So the 4th point is a little thing, but I think the other 3 were very interesting. Like the first one is about just sitting with the guru, being quiet and observing what is happening with your mind, and I think that's a really good point. And by mind, I think it means emotions and everything. The second point is checking the yogi's feces, which is very interesting again. But and the third one is if that person's face starts resembling the deity or their guru, then definitely they have got a level of bhakti going on, which is very nice. So the next bit, after he highlighted these ways to test a saint, is very interesting and very relevant for this video. So I'm going to read it out and close on that. So there's just another couple of minutes left. So if you've stuck on till now, just stuck on for 2 more minutes. So this is how it goes. None of the saints, fakirs and babas that I met impressed me nearly so much as Vimalananda. Perhaps because none of them had gone through the grind as thoroughly as he had. So the section that Vimalananda is talking about how to test saints is now over, and the next section starts with Robert Svoboda in first person. So he basically says Vimalananda was the most impressive one he had met. And he goes on to say, because he always preferred to have questions put to him mentally so that he could answer them at the moment he felt most appropriate. I began to mentally inquire about becoming his disciple. One day he told me frankly that he was not a guru, but that I would meet my guru one day if I had a strong enough desire to do so. And then he puts in quotation marks, which is Vimalananda saying basically, people are always coming to me saying that they want to locate a guru, and I always tell them that if you have real bhakti, real spiritual love and devotion, then your guru will automatically come to you. You won't have to go out looking for him. You don't need to search, but you may well have to wait. And then he goes on to give some more example of someone else. But basically this was very interesting, because the relationship, earlier I mentioned Robert Svoboda as a disciple, but that's not it. This was the thing, like Vimalananda said that he couldn't be the guru, but I really agree with what he is saying, that instead of going and searching for the guru, if we cultivate the right situation within ourselves, the guru will anyway happen. So he talks about cultivating, real bhakti, real spiritual love and devotion. So I think that's really nice, and it's a great note to end this. I hope you all enjoyed. Namaste.